Hi,
Craig.
Craig.
Hello, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the paddock. Today we have Hannah, Drea, Megan, Rachel, and Amy with you. I'm just going to have them get right into this double Leclerc cursed Monaco weekend for us.
Hello. And we just wanted to go ahead and recap a little bit of what happened during practice. So we're just going to be short and sweet with FP1. For all those who don't know, Alex crashed at the end, red flag, and Carlos ended up getting P1, Alonso P2, and Lewis in P3. And then furthermore, in FP2, Albon made it out in the final minutes once mechanics worked their magic finally to get the car ready. But ultimately, Max ended in P1, Charles in P2, and Carlos in P3. And then furthermore, Max, Checo, and Lance went into FP3 kind of being the starters. But I don't know if y'all remember, Lewis' car ended up getting craned out. Cameras definitely should have been cut before showing so much of the underneath. Rightfully upset Toto in my eyes, and I feel like they should have got that out without sending it to the sixth floor, basically. But I'm also not a marshal. In Q1, Max, Yuki, and Alex. Q2, Max, Charles, Fernando. And then Q3, Fernando, and Esti Besti.
Well, Q3 actually had some problems because Charles was noted and then investigated for impeding Lando Norris. By the time that qualifying ended, we did not have a decision from the FIA. And then by the time that the post show ended for quali, we also had not had a decision until a few hours later, the verdict came in. The verdict was that Charles got handed a 3-place grid penalty. He is now started 6th, and SD Bestie is 3rd. Well, it was not cool that Charles did that. How was he supposed to know Lando was coming up behind him? Zavi?
Yeah, I also will say that brief moment when Alonso was on provisional pole, I was literally on the edge of my seat holding my breath. And then Max Verstappen was Max Verstappen and said, hold my Red Bull, and nabbed it at the last second. I know people say Monaco is like really predictable, but I will say the quali was insane to me. And a side note, I love how at all the other races, the track marshals work really hard to not expose the floor of the car when it's on the crane and keep the noses down. But in Monaco, like Hannah said, they're just like, screw it and hoist the cars up however they want. I feel like Adrian Newey had a heart attack when they pulled up Checo's car.
Yeah, like everybody else has already mentioned with the marshals and the cars, I'm pretty sure that Adrian Newey saw his life flash before his eyes when they moved Checo's car. Every engineer on the entire grid, taking photos of that car and looking at it with magnifying glasses, trying to figure out what the magic sauce is that Red Bull has managed to make.
So, something interesting that happened this morning on live television was there was a Red Bull mechanic who was cursing and yelling at someone. I read somewhere that someone was leaning on Max's car potentially, and that's why the Red Bull mechanic was yelling and cursing. But it was really awkward because Martin Brundle was trying to get to Christian to interview Christian, and it looked like the mechanic was yelling at Martin, and Martin was like, "We're on live TV, dude." And it just was really bad. But then Martin, I guess, was kind of like, oh, I guess he's not yelling at me. So he went over to Christian and did an interview with Christian. But Christian didn't say anything about the Red Bull employee. Not that he has to, but he wasn't even like, oh, sorry about that. But another interesting thing that happened this morning was the meetup of everybody's dreams. And the meetup that everybody has been talking about and wishing about is Lando and Tom Holland have finally met in person. And it was very interesting to see because as a Lando girly, I was like, they really do look nothing alike when they're put right next to each other in person. But also, it was cute that Tom Holland got to wave the checkered flag at the end of the race. And he was just watching the cars go by, and he looked like a little kid again, with his eyes wide open and big, and he was just, it was adorable.
Yeah, and Tom actually got to attend the Monaco Grand Prix last year, but as just a spectator. So for him to attend this year and have the honor of waving the checker flag, that was the crossover from Marvel to F1 that I needed. It was amazing. So for people who don't know, this year was a little different in the pit lane. The garages were actually compacted and made smaller and went from 2 stories to 3. Traditionally, like in the garage, in the middle, you would have the engineering bay. but it was actually moved to the second floor this time. And then on the third floor was the hospitality. And it was to be more practical for an economical space for the track, or so they say, which is different. Furthermore, for anybody who doesn't know, the track was actually widened this year on one of the turns to help promote overtakes. And it was a little different to understand, especially for some of the drivers, because they were so used to the old track that going in at that turn, it actually caused a lot of like confusion.
Also, can we mention how funny it fucking was that the marshals were the barricade? Did you guys notice that too? Okay, so
We
please,
did.
because
Oh
at
my
one
God,
point I
yeah.
was like, my mom was like, look at them holding hands. I was like, holy fuck, it's a human barricade.
I thought
So
that was
did
so
Rachel's
funny.
dad. Her dad was like, "That's the only time you'll get all
Just
these men to hold
Rachel's
hands."
As just side note, especially with SD Bestie, and then like when he finally won and he's like hopping the barrier and all the marshals are like smiling but blocking him from everybody. It was amazing to see and it was so cute. But anyways, for anybody who doesn't know, during the pre-race anthem, it ended up being similar to last year where Charles was in front of the Prince and Princess of Monaco, and then behind the princess was the rest of the F1 drivers. So I don't know if this is just Monaco speaking into existence, but if it's not set in stone now, for everybody who doesn't know, the PGP girls were really praying that the Monaco curse would be lifted this week. Sad days. For everybody who also doesn't know, since Arthur got to race at Monaco this year, and both had picked the short end of the stick, apparently, because if the Monaco curse wasn't just for one Leclerc, it is now for both, apparently. So we need to do some witchery magic and break this curse because it hurts. It hurts us to see that happen.
So now we're going to get talking about the race and what happened during the race. And yet again, Max has proved that he is a literal monster in that Red Bull car. He keeps proving time and time again why he is the best driver on the grid currently today. And that pace of that car does help him definitely considerably because of the fact of Adrian Newey designing an absolute perfect piece of machinery. But Max is also a monster, and to win the race by, I believe it was like 40 something seconds over Fernando Alonso, he's insane. And the race got exciting once the rain started to fall and drivers were shifting places and some overtaking was happening. And I'm also so happy for Esteban that he got P3 because he's had an amazing weekend. Like, he's been on top of the charts with his pace this whole entire weekend. And although it's sad because Charles could have potentially been P3 on the podium if it wasn't for the thing that happened that Drea discussed previously, Esteban deserves it. He's also an incredible driver, and to see him finally get a podium again and be up on that podium again, it was awesome. And Lando in the rain / wet weather he's a menace when it comes to driving in the rain. His pace, I'm pretty sure he was the second fastest man on track behind Lewis. For a while, he was putting in the fastest lap during the race, but Lewis managed to get fastest lap at the end of the race. He managed to close a 48-second gap between him and Carlos down to 25 seconds. That man is insane, and he was ahead of Oscar by about 10 to 15 seconds. So, and he also managed to overtake Oscar and Yuki, which overtaking in Monaco is already hard enough to begin with, but also in the rain he was doing this. I'm just happy that McLaren got a double points finish this weekend, as our McLaren girly. They deserve it. They've been having one hell of a season so far. And by one hell of a season, I mean not a great season. I'm just happy that they had a good weekend, that it was honestly a decent race for a lot of people, and I already cannot wait for Monaco next year.
Yeah, like Meg said, Max is insane in that Red Bull. Absolutely not shocking turn of events. He won the race, as he does. But that doesn't mean that the race wasn't, like, exciting. I personally thought the race was pretty exciting, especially after the rain started coming down. But Max making medium tires last for 56 laps was kind of crazy. Medium tires are like basically a combination of the soft and hard tires, but their average lap life is about 40 laps. The soft tires have more grip, allowing the cars to go faster, but they also heat up faster, which causes them to wear down. And they only last about 20 to 30 laps. Hard tires have the least amount of grip. They last a little bit longer, about more than 50 laps average. So the medium tires lasting him 56 laps was pretty crazy. And those were the C4 tires, which are pretty standard for every race weekend. Max said himself that it was double the time that they had planned on getting out of those tires too. So that was just like already something that was kind of crazy. The rain definitely made things interesting, but I'm just glad that Charles finished the race at this point. This is only the second time he's finished in Monaco. Last year he finished P4. At least he finished. Arthur, I think, DNF'd, if I remember correctly. Monaco curse is, I think, slowly being lifted and or slowly being transferred to Arthur. But I'll take it. And there were some other incidents and there were a couple of penalties, but honestly, all I really want to talk about is Esty Bestie getting P3. You could tell that man was so happy and he was just absolutely precious. He drove incredibly yesterday during quali and today during the race. And just the amount of excitement you could see in his face and his voice, like he really deserved it, and I'm so happy for him, and I really hope he keeps getting on podium more.
Esty Bestie's smile when he won and when they showed him finally in the tunnel, finally, because it took forever to finally show him on F1 TV, his smile in his eyes, like he like radiated that he was like pure joy. It was amazing. But Monaco was actually 78 laps total because of how tight it is. And with rain hitting around lap 51, once that happened, the race got a lot more exciting. With some questionable choices by not only driver strategists and engineers, McLaren pitted Lando for mediums, and then 2 laps later ended up pitting him again to go in the inters due to the rain. Then Ferrari waiting till after everybody else switched to inters to call the guys in at the same time to do the switch. They ended up having a good pit stop. No issues there. It was relatively quick, but still questionable choices. Was it a strategy or a failure? The rain was considered a class 1 at first, which means a drizzle, versus ending up actually in a class 2, which is considered light rain. But if anybody was watching F1 TV, it looked more like a class 3 with a hard rain pour and then going to a drizzle real quick. But I don't know for sure because I wasn't in person.
I was not in person either, but let's talk about how that rain looked on TV and what that means for their tire strategies, because some of the teams could take a lesson from this. Let's say that. So the official tire provider is Pirelli. All their tires are Pirelli. There are 6 different slick tire compounds, and the slick tires mean that the track is dry. It's a normal weekend. We don't have any weather changes. It's dry and hot. But they will choose 3 compounds for each teams to pick from. And then the teams have to manage their tires the whole weekend through free practice 1, 2, 3, and then quali and the race. So with the Monaco GP this year being dry at first, it's like, okay, normal weekend, we have the dries. Halfway through with the rain, they then have to change over to a different tire. And they have either intermediates, which means that there is water on the racing line and it doesn't have as much grip. So that's why the intermediates are needed. They get more grip and they make sure they don't slide around as much. And then they get the full wets, and full wets are used for whenever they have standing water on the track so they don't hydroplane, or as they say on F1 TV in the commentary, aquaplane. So the rain was quick to come, and with it came many pit stops. Example, Logan had 5 pit stops by the end of this. Usually you have 2, maybe 1. The cars that slid around were Carlos. He had a little bump with the barrier and switched him over to intermediates because they're like, okay, clearly those ones are not gripping the track and we still have to go for this race. The teams quickly came in for their intermediates and some came in for full wets. Like K-Mag went from hard tires to full wets right away. He was one of the last ones to change over to any type of wet tires, but he did full wets, and then 2 other cars went with him. Max was on intermediates. Max's engineer said, "How's it going? Max, what's your opinion?" Max said, "I think we're good here. Like, these will last to the checkered flag." And he was right, because when is Max ever wrong? He could be his engineer at this point. That's how they win, and Ferrari needs to take a lesson from that. So go, Max.
And Let's not forget to talk about some of the FIA questionable choices and decisions from Monaco. First, I don't know how Carlos didn't get a penalty for hitting Ocon and was given a yellow flag for debris in the track, then a black and white flag for unsportsmanlike behavior. Interesting. He took wing damage and chose not to pit to do the wing change because there wasn't any issues or concerns at the time. Surprised no penalty was given to Carlos despite a penalty given to Hulkenberg and Sargent for almost the same incident happening. What the heck?
The FIA has really had some questionable decisions recently. I think we can all agree on that one. One thing that I noticed that people hadn't quite brought up yet was the fact that the track had actually been recently resurfaced prior to the race, which I found super interesting because I wouldn't have expected them to do that since it is a regular street. It's not something that I think everybody would think that, oh yeah, they're going to resurface the streets. I was listening to the regular F1 TV pundits, not Sky Sports, and a few of them are residents and pointed out that they didn't even realize they had done it until it was all completed, which I think is absolutely fantastic because nobody wants to deal with construction. As everybody else pointed out, Max was absolutely fantastic this weekend. I think it's safe to say that he gave an absolute masterclass, but that's just me and I am a Red Bull girl. There were obviously some questionable penalties. 5 seconds for Nico. George got hit with 5 seconds, I think twice. Carlos probably should have had one, but that's the FIA's decision, not ours. I don't know if anybody else got an eyebrow raise out of Carlos's engineer constantly saying, box, box to overtake Ocon, and thinking that that ruse was going to work more than once after repeatedly telling him to stay out. I know for me, that Ferrari double-stacked pit stop kind of had my heart in my stomach a little bit, because I was really hoping they weren't going to mess it up. Thankfully, everything went off without a hitch. As a Red Bull fan, my heart hurt a little bit seeing Checo get lapped by Max, but he just really kind of didn't seem to pull it together this weekend. Not really sure what was going on with him, but the king of the streets was not his usual self. I know people have brought up Logan recently, involved with some incidents. Just doesn't seem to be hooking it up recently. I understand that he is a rookie, but I'm really hoping that he can kind of just pull it together soon, because right now he's not performing. It's a little lackluster for me.
Yeah, I will say though, Williams' strategist kind of screwed him over this weekend. Why they put softs on, I will never understand. And 5 pit stops. I think he had the most pit stops out of anyone. I think everyone else had maybe 2, and that was only because they had to pit for inters. 3 if they pitted for full wet, unless you're K-Mag, in which case you just went straight to full wets.
You are not wrong. Williams has definitely been taking a page out of Ferrari's book with some questionable strategy calls. It's just that some of them have definitely made me scratch my head. Like everybody else, Esty Bestie seriously impressed me this weekend. He kept his head down and he really just hooked up a fantastic race. And seeing that man smile pulling into Parc Ferme was fantastic. That man was the definition of elated, which I just love to see. I think him saying Esty Bestie's got a podium, baby, is going to be burned into my memory forever because it just was fantastic. I don't know if anybody else noticed that Toto actually came across George's radio. That one threw me for a loop real quick because it's not normal that you hear him coming over George's radio. Lewis's every so often. I think this is the first time that I have heard Toto come over George's radio, and it really just kind of threw me for a loop. But as always for me, Monaco is one of my favorite races. It always keeps it interesting. I personally really hope that they get to extend their contract past 2025 because it really is just always one of my favorite races on the calendar.
And one more quick thing that I wanted to bring up before we talk about feelings about our final results is Esty Bestie tripping off of his podium and knocking over his champagne bottle, and Max coming up and laughing and helping him pick it back up again. Just, it was a moment, and it was a great moment, and it was a funny moment that I wanted to bring up just because I feel like that just describes kind of what happened today. perfectly. I love how Max was just kind of like, hee hee, and helped him pick it up again.
Really quick, Amy, when you said Max really gave a Monaco masterclass, I would say, like we have Max explaining, it could be a Maxter class. That was a bad pun.
There were multiple videos on TikTok of like Max holding court and Max explaining. So I think he might do it. He's already doing it.
It is the Max Verstappen Max-plaining podcast, and we're just along for the ride, people.
Okay, valid. But no, I want my Ferrari people. Please, just once this season, give us the joy. But, what would we be without talking about the final results and some of our feedback from there? For all who don't know, Max Verstappen has officially surpassed Sebastian Vettel's number of wins with Red Bull. But also, let's not forget that Verstappen lapped his teammate twice. Like, what was going on? And then just some thoughts about the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull is still in the lead, and Aston Martin and Mercedes are actually 1 point apart, with Aston at 120 points and Mercedes at 119. And then the person who's supposed to be in fourth at 90 is Ferrari. And then after that, everybody has pretty long stretch between fifth and sixth and furthermore. So domination and a close call to see what the year will bring.
Now, I don't know if I am the only one who is participating in the F1 fantasy leagues that are going on around, but I think Checo may have seriously messed me up this week because he's on all of my teams, and I was really expecting the King of the Streets to deliver for me this weekend. He just didn't, but we'll see what my results look like once everything is finished calculating. I know people are seriously sick of seeing Max win, but he really did pull together a fantastic lap, especially with 2 hours of racing and there being tons of different conditions. It was just fun to watch, but I do agree I would love to see some more variety in our podiums and just get a little bit more spice out of a race. I was surprised. I think there was only one DNF the entire race with Stroll, but I was really expecting more than one. Like, I feel like most Monaco races, we've got at least 3.
The real MVP of this race after everything was said and done was whenever David Coulthard was interviewing Max, and nobody really cared about Max. The cameraman was the real MVP because he got Esty Bestie jumping into Alpine's arms. And that's what we really were here for, to see him celebrate. Because he hasn't won since Turkey of 2020.
Fun fact about the last time Esty Bestie got a podium, it was with Fernando Alonso. So it was kind of really cute to see them get another podium together.
Hey, quick question. Wasn't there 2 DNFs? So Magnussen got DNF'd at the very end. I believe it was because he hit the barrier, if I'm not mistaken. And then Stroll, I believe, was just having a bad day, let's be honest.
Who didn't hit the barrier this weekend, to be honest, though? Whether it be like them barely brushing it or them accidentally sliding into it with the rain.
Monaco is really always a little chaotic. Lance really was just wasn't himself this weekend, I feel like. I don't know if maybe just the car wasn't performing the way he wanted or what. He just had pretty high expectations for him and didn't quite meet them, but that's just me. This is just a fun little fact that I realized at the end of the race. This is officially Fernando Alonso's 5th podium in 6 races. At least for me, I think it's safe to say that he is the new Mr. Consistency and has stolen that title from George Russell. But that's just me. I think that's super fantastic, and I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season brings for him. Hoping for a few more podiums, maybe a little bit more diversity, get him a P1 in there maybe a time or two would just be nice. I really want to know if at the end of this race, if Max followed through with the Red Bull tradition of jumping in the Red Bull swimming pool. And so for those who don't know, normally it is filled with water. But this race, because there is a water ban in Monaco, it is filled with balls, and it is a gigantic ball pit. There are pictures of Will Buxton in it, up to his neck, quite literally, in ball pit, and it is the best thing I think I've ever seen.
The ball pit honestly is fantastic. I love the iconic swimming pool photos, like Danny literally just falling in, Checo doing a flip. Incredible. I love it. I really would love to see a grown man jumping into a ball pit. I feel like that would just be hilarious.
Wasn't Red Bull in the ball pit, like, as a team, having their time of their lives? It was honestly, seeing all that content that got posted on social media made my heart happy to see Danny, see Checo, and to see Max just living their best life.
Yeah, I think I kind of prefer the ball pit because we got all that content. I mean, we got Yuki and Nick in the ball pit, which was so funny. Will Buxton, like Amy said, in the ball pit was just absolutely hilarious. And I feel like while the swimming pool pictures are, like I said, iconic, the ball pit was just chef's kiss, absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I personally really wanted to see Max pull a Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber, and launch himself into the harbor, but that's just me. I thought that would have been hilarious, but I love the ball pit because it just made a bunch of grown men turn into little kids in about 2 seconds the minute they saw it.
Oh yeah, and I totally forgot, but AlphaTauri was in the ball pit as well, and having the content of their lives, and just seeing little Yuki just like hanging out, just chilling, kind of almost too deep to where you could barely see him because he's so small, that it was great.
Did you guys see that Lizzie got stuck in the ball pit while she was interviewing Daniel? And that he tried rescuing her with a pool float, but the queen herself managed to get out by herself. But she was like, oh my god, I'm stuck. And he was like, okay, I'll try and save you.
Lizzie is amazing. Like, I love her. I love her. And the fact collected, but like down to earth and human and funny. And she's like, I'm stuck. Help. And Danny's like, being the gentleman he is, like, let me help you. I'll figure it out. And they just a little bit of a struggle bus.
It's the fact for me that she managed to, oh so ladylike, get out of the ball pit in a dress. I don't know about anybody else, but I found that freaking epic and absolutely badass. Her outfits this weekend were just perfect. All of the women in F1 really came through with the fantastic fits this weekend.
Yeah, Carmen had really good outfits this weekend. And you know who was trying to be very gentlemanlike was George, because of the pictures that were everywhere of George having to help her on and off the boats and yachts. Because she was, I mean, he's pretty tall, like he's over 6 foot, and she's not. She is probably 5'5".
That was literally the cutest thing, watching him, like seeing the photos of him like helping her in and out, because he's just picking her up. She's not even like stepping, he's just like lifting her. And it's adorable. I absolutely love them together. They are so precious and so incredible. I love them.
I legit strive to one day have a boyfriend or a husband like George, because who wouldn't? George is literally amazing from what you can see on screen. I've never personally met him in person, would love to one day, but he's just so gentleman and so proper and respectful. Respectful. Take notes. Take notes.
If he's anything like the Mercedes employee we met in Miami, I'm good with that too, because that man was a gentleman, and I guess it just runs in Mercedes.
That was my other love of my life. Thank you so much.
George Russell really is the definition of like chivalry. Like, he's just such a chivalrous guy. It's so sweet. Like, you know, he's picking Carmen up like she's absolutely nothing and just going like, and here you go, you're safely on solid ground, let's not have you fall in. Like, he's so cute. The forehead kiss, like, my heart melted. I'm not a George Russell girl, but that made me be like, oh.
Also, I know we don't want to get too deep into this topic, but did anybody see Charles' new potential girlfriend or best friend, who knows, Alexandra, there at Monaco, literally watching the race from the Ferrari pit, and her dresses and style was amazing. She looked so shy and nervous, and it made me just love her and cherish her a little bit more. And it's like, keep her, like Let her live her best life, and I hope she's happy.
Then, speaking of Charles, before the weekend started, can we talk about how he was on some kind of event and he was on a yacht? He was carrying his shoes, and everyone's like, "Why are you carrying your shoes in your hand? Why are you wearing your socks, bro?" And it's because he knows he's a Monte Carlo native. To be on a yacht, you don't wear your shoes. It ruins the floorboards.
Yes, for all the people who are not boaters out there, you do not wear your shoes on a boat. It is a cardinal sin. You just don't do it.
Okay, y'all bring up a great point. Did y'all not see Charles and Arthur like on the yacht talking about the tribute helmet, the new race suit, and it felt very much like it was a tribute to his father and then a tribute to Jules all in one. And it was what we needed. The love and the conversation was just amazing.
I have to say, I love that Monaco gave us our first Charles and Arthur interview. They never do media together ever. And that interview of just the two of them sitting down made my heart so happy. Though I personally wish they had done it in French, where it's their native language. I feel like Arthur isn't quite as comfortable with his English yet, but he sounds fantastic. But I don't know if anybody else noticed all of Charles' family and friends and the matching t-shirts that have his face all over it that say Charles Leclerc, the Prince of Monaco, all over it. I was ecstatic to see them. That was so cute.
I need one of those shirts. I need one of those shirts. It also, on the bottom, it says the Piano Man. It's incredible. But I was going to say, seeing all of the tribute stuff that Charles and Arthur did for their father, the helmets, and then Charles kind of paying homage to Jules with his special race suit for this race was just, it was really sweet. And it was so, you can tell he still has a lot of love and he really misses them, and he like, everything is for them along with himself. And it's just really, really sweet. I also love the interview. My favorite part of the interview with Arthur and Charles was when Arthur asked him, like, if you weren't, an F1 driver, what would you be? But he immediately answered for Charles and said, "Oh, a musician." And Charles just kind of laughed. He's like, "Oh yeah, sure." But like, he's not wrong. The two songs that he's, put out have done really well, and they're incredible. They're so relaxing. I love them.
From that interview, I loved how Arthur was asking the questions. Like, you can tell he was just reading them for the first time. So he's asking, "Oh, you wear red pants for the weekends?" And he's like, "Wait, is that true?" And Charles is like, "Yeah, it's true. I just, one weekend it happened, I did well, and it's been sticking." So Charles is a little superstitious. Hopefully his cloud pants don't make it into that rotation.
Interview did give us that both of them are a little superstitious. I don't know if anybody picked it up, but Arthur does a similar thing with purple boxers, which was just kind of like, Arthur, this is information I didn't necessarily need to know, but appreciate it, I guess. I just love that they're very similar in some of their habits, and it's just so cute to see how close-knit that whole family is.
And then can we bring up all of the driver interactions, whether it be in person or on social media, that were happening this weekend? Like, there was one clip of Max and Charles walking next to each other, and Max is like, "Oh, I like your new suit." And Charles points to the red diamonds and goes, "Yeah, isn't it cool? It looks like blood." And Max just goes, "Yeah."
I think my favorite driver interaction was on Twitter between Lando, the Formula One Twitter account, and Charles, when the whole impeding thing happened and they had a video of it on the F1 Twitter account, and Lando replied to it with the "nothing, it's just an incident" meme. I think that was my favorite thing from the whole weekend.
Did like the new race suits and new livery that McLaren did for the Triple Crown. Getting to see the video and reaction of Lando seeing the car for the first time, and then getting to see it out on track was nice. I would give them some few pointers on how they could probably improve the design, but it was really cool to see the Triple Crown and all the perspective on that, and Lando wearing the suits. Maybe it made them better. Maybe that's why they did a little bit better than usual. You'll never know.
I agree. I like seeing the McLaren Triple Crown. I do also agree that the livery could have maybe been done a little bit better. But I really liked seeing Lando's reaction. You could kind of tell that, like, as he was looking at the livery and kind of talking about it and explaining, what the different parts were, that he was still himself almost in awe of the legacy of McLaren. And it felt like he was kind of still, even though he's been with McLaren for years now, he still couldn't really believe that he's driving McLaren because that's been his dream. And it just really felt like a really special moment for him that he was like, wow, this is what I've been dreaming of my entire life, and I'm here and I'm part of this legacy. And it was just really sweet. And I don't know if anyone else got vibes like that, but that's kind of what I got from the video. And to kind of start to round it off, our moment of the weekend and kind of driver quote is obviously going to be, it has to be, Esteban getting P3 in Monaco. Absolutely love that. Just incredible. And for the quote, Esty Bestie's on the podium, baby!
That was amazing. If you guys couldn't tell, 3 of our girls are together this weekend. So that was a joy for, my heart. I loved hearing them do that together, and I loved watching them do it. But that about finishes up this episode, and it's officially time to leave Monaco until next season. Unless we have a full mental breakdown one weekend and we book a random PGP trip in the off season. Y'all will know first though, so don't worry, we won't keep it from you. As always, keep up with us on socials at Paddock Girls Podcast on everywhere but Twitter. Our special little one over there is at Paddock Girls Pod. As always, thanks for joining us in the paddock. See you at the next race. Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.
Hi, Craig.